Okay, so today I saw this article I wanted to read. It's 15 condescending remarks women have actually heard from medical professionals. Let's see. Everyone in the world is not treated the same by people who are in positions of power or authority. I think this is still it's it's shocking how this is still true. If you haven't heard, there was this okay, so he's a Tokyo Olympics chief, saying it includes about 7 women, but they all know how to behave, the newspaper reported. Mori's remarks provoked laughter from the committee members, according to the newspaper, but on social media, as reports his comments surfaced, people quickly began calling for Mori to resign. Well, yeah, it's kind of hard to speak out, especially if it's someone in power and if it's an old person. In Asian countries, we really look up to elders, and sometimes they can get away with a lot of things. Okay, so a meeting of an executive board that includes many women would take time. Women are competitive. When someone raises his hand or speaks, they probably think they should speak too. That is why they all end up making comments. And I think that's bullshit. Anyway, so it was fine during the meeting, but I guess, if I was in the meeting and that, if I would probably not say anything. I would probably just give him a disapproving look and not say anything, just because one, he is a man of power, two, he is an elder. So it's really hard to speak up to someone like that. Um I feel like that's probably how, you know, they reacted to this. I think this is too much though. I think if he did an apology video, it would have been fine. As long as he was sincere about it.
All right, that's it. That's honor.
One night, I was helping my friend unload her groceries and I felt this excruciating pain. I didn't know where it came from, but I knew it was in my ovaries. After hours of just sitting in my house in excruciating pain, my husband finally talked me to go into the ER. The doctor came in and said, "Oh, you have a tummy ache?" I said, "No, my ovaries hurt." After arguing with him about my tummy issues, I had to go into emergency surgery because my fallopian tube exploded due to ectopic pregnancy. I wish I knew more about what happened in the ER, like if she was still in excruciating pain. But I feel like, yeah, I would understand if the patient came in like, "Oh, my this part of my body really hurts," if it's just plain like that. But if she was, in excruciating pain, cold sweat, there's those people who, even though they're in pain, it doesn't show up in their face. So that might be that might be a, something that might have happened. But nevertheless, this is still like, "Oh, you have a tummy ache." This feels condescending, but I don't know. This should not be allowed. I went online and I scheduled an appointment to refill my birth control. The appointment came around and we started talking about my medication refills, which were my birth control and my inhaler. "Oh, I have an inhaler." The doctor left, came back, and sat in front of me and said, "I refilled your inhaler, but I'm not going to be able to refill your birth control." I was kind of confused. I asked why. "Well, because it's against my religion." Okay, now this is bad. Long story short, he ended up getting fired. Well, yeah. I hope his. I wonder how his license is going. Um, no. You're a doctor first and foremost, and you are not working at a hospital, with your religion up front. It should be being a doctor, and even if it's against your religion, it's something that you're in duty. But you're in duty, you're supposed to do. We make all these um oaths to patients, and I think He's getting ahead of himself here. I got put on a new antidepressant and I was on it for a month. And my doctor told me that I was supposed to kick in by them. Hmm? And I was having really bad suicidal thoughts, so I went to the doctor's office and said, "Hey, this isn't working." But my usual doctor wasn't there. In walks this 50-year-old man. He tells me that I don't have depression and it's probably teenage hormones, and then says maybe exercise. Wow.
This is not okay. This needs to stop now.
And then 2 days later, I ended up in the hospital because I was going to commit. I had to talk to so many different doctors, and one walks in and says, "Are you taking any medicine?" And I said, "No, just Wellbutrin." While I was sitting there crying my eyes out because I literally wanted to, she looks at me in my face and says, you're not taking acne medicine. You know you can see a doctor for that." Wow.
What?
Seriously? So while this girl is sitting there crying her eyes out, she asks, "You're not taking any acne medicine?" Wow. I mean, girls can be vain, but this person is vain on top of being insensitive. I hope he got something, I hope he got reprimanded or suspended or something, because this is just too much. That's gonna be my line throughout this whole article. This is too much. I was a junior in high school and I was going to swim meet because I was a swimmer. I started having horrible severe stomach pain. I wrote it off as cramps because I was on my period at that time. But it got so bad that I couldn't stand up, talk, or move. Yeah. So my mom took me to the ER and the doctor came in and was like, "Oh, you said you were on your period, right?" He didn't do any scans or anything. He just wrote it off as period pains and that I was pretty much just a pussy. If he said that, if he said this, bad. But I think he didn't do any scans or anything, because this would be diagnosis wise. One, she is in her periods. Two, the pain is on her um that area. So it is understandable why he thought this, but if he said this, then it's a different story. Turns out I had ovarian cysts that popped. Oh yeah. And I was internally bleeding and I was going into sepsis. And now I have so much scarring that I can't have kids. Oh. I wonder how she found out. So I understand this, why he got into this conclusion, because that would be the first answer usually. But he should have done scans, especially if the pain was too much that she couldn't stand up, talk, or move. This should have been an indication to, check her out inside. I went to the gynecologist to get a checkup and also get some possible PCOS symptoms. He mentioned, "Oh, you gained a lot of weight since your last visit," and then said, "Well, you know what you could do? Just chew your food but don't swallow it." So anytime you get tempted by what you want to eat, just chew it and then spit it out. That way you get to eat what you want, but you don't get the calories, because we want to see you lose a few pounds before your next visit.
Stop it. Get some help.
Wow, this is. Imagine you're a doctor, but you're putting people into diseases instead of, helping them. I was 22 and started having really bad pain in my right lower abdomen. I was on my period at that time, but it got so bad that I thought it was appendicitis. I went to the emergency clinic, got checked out, and then they said it's not appendicitis, but we found a rather large cyst on your ovary. And so the other male doctor said, "You know what? I just really don't understand why women find ovarian cysts so painful. It's just sitting on your ovary." When you learn about cysts or tumors, it's one of the first things they teach you that one of the few reasons it causes pain is because it might impinge on nerves, it might impinge on your other organs. This is really insensitive too. I hope he got like reprimanded for that. I hope he got yelled on for that. I mean, can you just imagine if he once when he said that, you know, in front of you? In this case, I would definitely like look at him and say something, because it's not like the other case where you're talking to someone in power or talking to someone, um some elder. In this case, they're supposed to try to help you. So this is just insensitive. And also, he's a guy. As I was delivering my daughter, I mean pushing her out, the male doctor popped up his head between my legs and said, "Do you work out? Because you're really tight." Wow. Why did he have to do that? I can't get it out of my head. It lives there rent free and will probably be there for the eternity because it was so disgusting. Yeah. Wait. This, probably was because, she was so tight that the baby couldn't really, was having a hard time getting out, and she was also having a hard time pushing her out. So because a lot of our terms, even though they're the first time you hear it, they're sexual innuendos for other people or people who aren't in the medical field, but this I think should be fine. Um, yeah, but I think it's just the difference in how we're exposed to these terms. Because obviously we're used to saying this, and I think it's not, it's do you work out? So in his thinking, it's his muscles, her muscles are really strong, or her muscles are really toned. That's why the baby's not able to come out. But I think um she misinterpreted it as a sexual innuendo. But it's not his fault, it's also not her fault. It's the difference in the exposure to the exposure and the use of the words. So I can't get mad at that. Paid for not working. I have a lot of really bad back issues, and it got to the point where it was just so painful I went to a doctor for it. He gave me some x-rays and said, "Yeah, your back is perfectly healthy. It doesn't matter." And I was like, "Okay, then tell me why I can't lay down at night." "This is horrible," he said. "It's just your muscles," and gave me muscle relaxers. Well, surprise, surprise, they didn't work, and earlier this year it got to a point where I'd slipped a disc. I got an MRI to see if it was just a slipped disc, and guess what? I have a nerve damaging in the part of my back that he was supposed to x-ray and diagnose but didn't. Wait, here he said he gave me some x-rays, and so she was x-rays the first time. I think this was a misunderstanding, because if assuming that this guy knew what he was doing and he gave some x-rays and said, "Yeah, your back looks perfectly healthy," meaning he didn't find any anomalies, any pathosis in the x-ray, then at that time it must have been like, if he got some x-rays and found nothing bad, so he assumed it was your muscles. I think that's pretty normal. I would love to see how Dr. Mike would react to this, just because, he is in that specialty or in that field. Anyway, one time I threw out my back so badly that an ambulance had to come and take me to the emergency room because I couldn't walk and was in so much pain. When I got to the ER, the doctor refused to do any x-rays, CTE, MRI, nothing. His reasoning was wow, women just have a lower pain tolerance. Okay, so it is proven that women has a lower pain tolerance. And even if they have a lower pain tolerance, as a doctor, you're supposed to find out what it is causing her pain and relieve it. It doesn't matter if her pain tolerance is low. The point is it's causing her so much pain. And that at that time I was in my late 20s and extremely fit and healthy, so I must have been fine. It's been 10 years of excruciating pain trying to find a doctor who takes me seriously. She's been to several, and I've finally been able to see an orthopedic surgeon. He was absolutely shocked and couldn't believe I can still stand upright and walk around. I now have a major surgery on my back, which could have been avoided if it was taken properly 10 years ago.
Disappointed!
Yeah, this is bad because she was already taken in an ambulance and that she because she couldn't walk. This doctor is just stupid. Like, this doctor is stupid. So annoying. 3 years ago, I was in a very bad accident. I hit black ice. What is black ice? Going 7 mph meters per hour. Luckily, the only injury was a very smashed collarbone and a fear of driving. I obviously had trauma surgery to repair my collarbone because it was in pieces. A few days later, I had a post-op with my trauma surgeon, and he told me three things. One is that the nurses were pissed that they had to hold my fat arm in the air during surgery, and he said it looked like a ham hock. What? He then said that women get the plate that's put in place during surgery removed, but I was so fat that it wouldn't be able to see my collarbone anyway, so it didn't really matter if it was attractive or not. And three, he kept on insisting my dad was my husband, which was disgusting. This doctor needs his license to be removed. One, fat shaming is never okay. Two, there are times when you have to tell a patient what's going on and, for example, like tell her you're too obese and you have to work on your diet. This wasn't helping her at all. This is just fat shaming and criticizing. And this, why? He should have his she should have complained somewhere, I don't know where. She should have complained, got his name, complained, tell them what happened, and got his license removed. This is like too much. One is that the nurses were pissed that they had to hold my fat arm in the air during surgery. Well, that's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to help during the surgery, and if this is what helped the surgeon, then that's what they're supposed to do. Wow, this is bad. I went to see a male OBGYN to tell him that I was having a 70-day long period. Wow. It was so bad that every time I took a shower, I had to push the blood out of the way so that the water would drain. Come to find out, my uterus prolapsed. It was falling out. So I also had endometriosis, and as a result, it was really pulling my organs out through my, you know what. This male doctor told me that it would all stop if I lost weight. I was dying. If this was an actual cure for what was going on, you know, after they fixed her, then maybe he just said it in an insensitive way. About 7 to 8 weeks in my first pregnancy, I started bleeding and cramping. So my husband and I went to the emergency room. After about 3 or 4 hours, the male doctor came in and said, "Well, there goes that baby. That just means you get to try again."
What will you learn? What will you learn?
I know how hard it is for couples to have a baby. So this is really insensitive because one, even if they didn't know this, which I think the doctor would know because they would know when they were doing the interview, the doctor should have known that this is an emotional hurdle that they're going through, and it was really hard for them, especially because not only they were actually trying to have a baby. So I was in the ER for the second time in 2 weeks and had been there for about 11 hours. The doctor came to my bed, leaned against the wall, crossed his arms, and told me that I have no valid reason to be in the ER and not to come back. He said I was perfectly healthy young woman and that I shouldn't worry about anything. As soon as I get home, he called me and said, "I'm so sorry. Someone else looked at your scans. You have to come back right now. You have a brain tumor." Well, at least he apologized. I just hope he apologized more because it's not gonna suffice to this one. If he's not good at looking at scans, he should have confided with another doctor before before he had her go home. Because if the patient is in pain and you can't see anything in the scans, that means either you're not finding something you're supposed to find, or you're supposed to look more. It's never gonna suffice to you're just a pussy and you're healthy. So if she's healthy, then where's the pain coming from? In 2016, I had an ectopic pregnancy. The surgeon who performed my surgery did a really great job, and he was even able to save my fallopian tube. This year, I went to an OBGYN and I was talking to him about some symptoms I felt matched polycystic ovary syndrome or PCOS. When we were reviewing my history and I mentioned that I'd had an ectopic pregnancy, he mentioned that I didn't have the tube anymore. I corrected him and said the surgeon was able to save my tube and that I still had both of them. He then decided to pull a model down of the uterus and ovaries and mansplain what an ectopic pregnancy was. He talked to me like I was so dumb. I've had one, dude. The surgery explained everything to me.
Just stop. Just stop it. Stop. No. Just stop.
She should have she should have she should have just stood up, said you're stupid, and looked for another doctor and probably put up a bad review somewhere. I hate it when doctors assume patients know nothing, especially when they've had something. In this case, like she's had a doctor correct it, she'd had that first doctor explain her everything. Wait, she should have given her also. Either he didn't look at or she didn't give her the medical records. But still, you should, even if you don't believe your patients, you should look into proof of why they're saying that, and like surgery notes or whatever. I had to see a pain specialist because I hurt my arm, and at the top of my chart, I made sure it was listed that I see a psychiatrist for my PTSD from being a child victim. The pain specialist came in and told me that I no longer needed my anxiety meds, depression meds, or any kind of sleep meds because I should be over it. This is when you're with someone who's battling a mental trauma, a mental, you know, um, psychological trauma, you can't just sum it down to, well, you should be over it. Or if someone is anorexic, you can't just tell her, well, you should just eat more. And when someone's bulimic, well, you should just stop that. It's not gonna work. According to this man who never in his life experienced this or even believe that it exists, he doesn't believe this exists. There's so many news articles and things. I should be over it. I would have flipped, okay, with this if I was her. I would love to see her reaction just so I get the satisfaction of seeing how his face crumbles into, something, and probably have his license removed. Why am I saying that so easily? It's because, but what did you guys think? I think there are a lot of these is really bad insensitive, and most of the time they're men doctors. And I feel like, just like the first one, they should just stop, because it's giving a bad name to the medical field, where we're supposed to do everything to help our patients. They're just making their jobs easier. This one is, but there are some parts where it's I feel like there was just a misunderstanding. The use of words aren't really the same when it comes to the medical field versus the non-medical field. Um, so you know. Anyway, that's all for me today. Comment down if you don't think what I think, or if you think what I think, and then let's have a educational and debate that is calm and open-minded. Bye.